Hey, Jim Crackton here. Today we're hitting the road along the classic highway of Route 66. And where better to start than Chicago in 1926, when the route officially opened. This is Lakeshore Drive, which is close to where it starts on Jackson Boulevard, but I picked this photo to show that car culture was officially rocking by this time. Note the lack of lane dividers, by the way. It was lane chaos! Dividers existed in some places, but didn't really become universal until the 1940s and 50s. So hitch a ride with me as we explore Route 66 on this episode of The Crackton Files. Route 66 was established in 1926, running about 2,448 miles from Chicago to Los Angeles. McLean, Texas is in the Texas Panhandle, which was a critical transition point between Oklahoma and New Mexico. It was primarily a service stop. Small independent service stations like these were critical for travelers. So what do you do if you break down in the middle of nowhere? Back in these times, breakdowns were common, and it was a custom for travelers to stop and take stranded people to the next town, such as McLean, who would send a tow rig. The Igloo Cafe was one of the early pioneers of novelty architecture to entice road travelers to stop, eat, and fuel up. It was built in 1937. Those tall, old-fashioned pumps were gravity-fed pumps. This is cool because they also have the newer electric pumps showing the transition. Germ-processed oil was 1930s and 40s ad speak for refined motor oil. Germ was just a sciencey sounding word for the time, not a reference to bacteria. In 1926, the famous gangster Al Capone moved his headquarters from Chicago to Cicero to escape police pressure. On September 20th, a rival gang sprayed the hotel with 1,000 rounds of machine gun fire, but Capone survived. This photo would have been taken shortly before or after. The buildings have since been demolished. You never know the drama you'll find on Route 66. This restaurant in Rolla, Missouri functioned as both a cafe and as a bus depot where people might transfer buses. Greyhound sometimes had their own depots with restaurants, but would sometimes contract with a restaurant to function as a depot. Greyhound buses were another way people took advantage of the Route 66 infrastructure. Greyhound started as a small local service in 1914 and expanded to national service by the early 1930s. As the U.S. entered World War II in 1942, the rationing of metal, sugar, coffee, and rubber began. To do their part, a group of 40 businessmen in Amarillo, Texas, took up riding their horses to town in order to conserve wear and tear on their tires and save gasoline. It was just another day on Route 66. Charles Custer and his wife did a small travelogue on their honeymoon, hoping to sell the photos and make some money. Not sure where this is, but it was a very typical Midwest drugstore and soda fountain where travelers would stop. The last frontier trading post opened in 1927 by Frederick San Diego Rawson, a poet, prospector, trapper, and scout. He sold the property in 1947, and later it became Ella's last frontier trading post. Trading post style stores were very common along Route 66. Wow, those station wagons were huge back in the day. Ella died in 1984 and the property became abandoned. This is all that's left today. In the 1930s, with the Great Depression in full swing, Route 66 was a road often for forced migration rather than leisure travel. Families displaced by drought and farm collapse loaded everything into cars and headed west. This family from Tulsa, Oklahoma is a mother and 3 children with a missing father. This is a can of Sieberling tire cement. If you look at the car, you can see they have 2 spares with them. Flat tires were a constant hazard in these days, and you could do a quick repair using rubber patches and tire cement. What's interesting about this hybrid food and gas station is that it likely started out as a restaurant. Shell would scout the highways looking for independent operators to partner with, supplying them with pumps and signage. It worked out well for everyone. The owner got a new revenue source, Shell got a new location, and travelers got a full-service food and gas stop. Note the price says 8 7/10. This threw me off because it was too cheap for the time. Cracking the mystery, it turns out it was common to leave off the 1 on signs, and everybody understood it was 18 cents. Kingman, Arizona is interesting because it wasn't primarily a tourist destination. It sat at a junction where railroads, mining roads, and the highway converged. That commercial hotel on the corner is advertising itself specifically for working men, traveling salesmen, and other itinerant workers. It may even have had a no-family policy. Now, there's a Kingman Motel next door, which is probably where families would stay. Of course, diners and restaurants were popular along Route 66. Elk City was a good fuel and food stop heading in or out of the long, flat stretch of Oklahoma. Steak and Shake was founded in 1934 in Normal, Illinois on a busy stretch of Route 66. The founder wanted to distinguish his restaurant from other eateries by grinding his beef right in front of customers to prove it was fresh. They're still a semi-national chain, though never attained quite the same saturation as chains like McDonald's. Movie theaters along Route 66 weren't just for locals. It was also a place for travelers to stop and rest and get away from the Midwest heat for a while. Along with Hitchcock's Shadow of a Doubt, there's also a sign about Universal News. This being 1943, during World War II, this was the only way to see newsreels and footage of the war effort. Television news wouldn't be common until the 1950s. And hey, the chemo's still there. Red's Giant Hamburg opened in 1947 and is generally recognized as the first drive-thru restaurant. They started taking orders through a window instead of a full sit-down restaurant, and people loved the idea. Supposedly it was called Hamburg because Red ran out of room for more letters. Here it is. But what? Here's the Jackrabbit Trading Post, which was one of the early stops to use giant novelty signs and characters to pull people in. They had the giant jackrabbit out front, which of course all the kids wanted to climb on. Route 66 was a great opportunity for many local craftspeople. In Missouri, an area became known as Basketville for the handmade baskets produced most commonly from Missouri white oak trees. The baskets blended beauty and practicality as a souvenir and were sold particularly on the 8-mile stretch of highway between Clementine and Hooker, Missouri. Victorville, California is a dusty little town, but was crucial to Route 66 travel. It was the last major service point where travelers topped off fuel and water before heading into the long, high desert stretch, or the place to fix your car if it suffered too much coming out of the desert. Route 66 would begin its slow decline in the 1950s when the interstate highway system was established, which was more efficient since it didn't require driving through towns. Route 66 was replaced in stages, and by 1985 it was officially decommissioned. Sadly, we've reached the final stop here in Los Angeles in 1947. When Route 66 first opened, this was the original western terminus. By this time, the route had been extended about 15 more miles to Santa Monica, but wasn't really marked. I figured I'd show the original official termination point that you don't normally see. Well, I hope you enjoyed this Route 66 road trip. Please leave a comment, and don't forget to subscribe to not miss our next excursion. And I'll see you in the next hitching episode of the Crackton.